would you please pronounce your name correctly for me?
So my name is Magali Avezou.
And what the first thing I always love to know about people is sort of like how they got into the creative field. So like, were your parents creative? Did you have some great teachers? Like, what was the thing in your early growing up that sort of brought you to the creative industries?
So no, my parents were and are not in the creative industries. I think the first connection I had with creativity was probably a neighbor who was a sculptor. So he was living just next door, and I could see it was in the countryside, so I could see his. I would go regularly to his studio where he was working, and I was fascinated by this. But that's something I wasn't really aware of, I guess. It came back to my mind much later. But that was probably the first connection with creativity. Then I had drawing class at school, but that wasn't like a fantastic thing. But I started taking like more serious classes when I was a teenager, I guess. So, and that was related to this man. That was he was Italian and he was working with Carrara marble, and that was quite fascinating to me. Yeah. Also, his way of life was different from my parents' one, so it was interesting.
As the artist lifestyle often is.
Well, it was a bit of of a stereotype in that sense. Like it was like the classical figure of the artist. Probably that also belongs to this generation and to these years. You would have a different rhythm in his daily life and much less structure than my parents had. So it was also very, very attractive for this, obviously. Now, I think, though, I'm not really agreeing with the general image of artists, because I could see that artists, to be able to make a good work, they work a lot and they are often very disciplined, actually, in their practice. So the idea of the artist waking up at 12 and working all night is not really the one I have today. I don't really agree with that.
I'm fascinated. What do you think the artist of today is sort of structured as?
I think the ones that I know that are serious about their art are very disciplined. So they tend to wake up very early and to work hard, to have like a very structured method about their art. So like keeping on fixed hours, and it depends. Some people work at night, but it's not that usual. I guess there is a sense of keeping with a discipline that is repeating day after day, and that allows for. It's the same with writers, for example. When you hear writers talk, like the myth of the writer of the 19th century drinking all night and writing at the same time while the muse is coming. Actually, it's not the way it works. You can't really create something fantastic if you're completely drunk or too tired. Also, you might have but well, yeah, I think it comes down to a discipline to be able to come back to your work every day and repeat, and it's less exotic than people would like to think.
Oh yeah, I have a friend of mine. His name's Sean Richards, and he has this amazing work ethic. He literally goes into his studio every day and is physically in the studio from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. like it's his job. Whether he's actually like actively painting or researching or writing grants or doing whatever he needs to do, but he literally like treats it like a job and is there 40 hours a week. And in many ways, I admire that, but in some ways, I'm sort of like, it kind of takes the fun away, doesn't it?
Yeah, but also I think you were mentioning the grant application and all this, and it is true that for an artist to be able to make it, there is a doses of an important part is administrative stuff, and it's also getting in touch with the right people, and it demands work, and it demands work in a certain way. You can't be completely crazy about your work and your communication about your work. So you do need to adapt also to how the artwork is working.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's completely different than when I came out of school 20 years ago. I mean, social media, the emphasis on residencies and grants and all these other kinds of, funding structures and opportunities that are, and maybe they were always there and I just was unaware of them because I wasn't paying attention, I guess. But it seems like there's a much more strength and emphasis towards grants and residencies and things along this line than there was in the past. Is that something you've noticed, or is that just me?
Well, I don't really know because 25 years ago, I wasn't really in that world that much, so I could not compare. But I have
It's
the
okay. You're
same
making me feel
sensation.
old. That's fine.
No, just because I started also in a different. Well, not that I wasn't that implicated with this world, but I agree with you. I have this feeling that the art world has been structured much more in the past years. Also because the art world as a business has grown probably a lot. So there is more money.
Well, that's something I feel like is happening a lot too. Is that like the the idea of being an artist used to be that bohemian lifestyle and all this kind of stuff that you talked about, but then now it's more of a brand, a business, a marketing, and all this kind of stuff. And to me, I'm still a romantic. Like I like the old bohemian lifestyle thing, and so I'm sort of like, why do we have to do all this? Like I would love it if we all could find people who could basically support us in that business side, because that's the one thing that I'm the weakest at, and I have the least understanding of, is that sort of business side of it all. And it's almost like we need like PR people. I mean, in the old days it used to be the gallerist would do that kind of stuff, but these days the galleries don't often do that kind of stuff for us. So it's this weird sense that like there's a certain amount of responsibility that used to be handled by other people, which is now being handed back to the responsibility of the creators.
Yeah, it's true, but that also comes down to the fact that more and more people want to be artists. So the competition is very high, I guess, and that's and also it's easier to be an artist than 40 years ago, I would say, because probably the means to be an artist are more available, like photography, for example is a medium that you may not need like a formal training, or you can also you can have access to a training online or do it in an easier way. So more people are tempted, and also it became like more fashionable to be an artist, maybe. So a lot of people are, and we saw it with photography since 20 years. Like the schools are crowded with so many students wanting to be artists, and it's complicated. I guess the market can't absorb all of this, and so there is much more competition.
Absolutely. No, no. But going back, so like, okay, your education, you went to Great Britain for some of your education, and now
Mhm.
you're back in France, correct?
Yes, I'm in Marseille now. It has been only 2 years since the pandemic, actually.
Okay, but my question really is sort of like, of all the different things that you could have sort of invested your time and energy in, why did you choose an interest, or how did you come to an interest in photography specifically?
Okay, so shall I go back to really the beginning of all of this?
Feel free.
Okay. I was photographing. I had cameras when I was a teenager. I was taking the old camera of my father, which is the typical story of
Me
like
too.
the analog
Wait,
one
what
that
was your
was in the phone.
camera? Mine was a Yashica D medium format, like twin lens reflex.
Mine wasn't that sophisticated. I think it was a Canon, but I got it stolen in Bulgaria. And it was a Canon, but I can't remember it was a nice old camera with different lenses, and it was very qualitative. But I can't remember exactly the number, actually. I wasn't that involved with it at the time. It was just a camera that I had there and that I was using. So I started with photography this way, but it was just like taking picture of my family and all of this. And but I studied history when I was 20, and I realized that I didn't want to be a teacher. I didn't want to go into traditional careers, and the only thing that interested me was actually culture. So I decided to study cultural management, which I did. And it's much later, when I was living in Spain, actually, that I realized that I wanted to have specific knowledge about one topic in culture. That I wanted to be specialized. And I was really interested in photography. I think I was fascinated by the image. I have always been. Like, there is something ontological about the image that is this double of the reality. I think most of photographers have this fascination, even if they are not completely aware of it. And there is this fascination of the double, like in a Freudian way, like we create a double of the reality, but it's not the double, and what it is, and what do we put of ourselves in it, what is actually not controllable about the way we make a picture, etc. So I think I wasn't totally aware of all those things when I decided to start studying photography specifically. I was in my 30s already. I started taking a course in Barcelona, which was like just a small course, but I really liked it. And suddenly it sparked something. And so I applied for Central St. Martin's in London, and I got in. And I started a new study path, actually. I did a PG cert in photography at Central St. Martin's in early 2010. And then I went on an MA at London College of Communication. And what really, suddenly a new world opened up to me. I think often things are like dormant in your life, and suddenly something open up. And there was a criticality in the way the British teach photography that is quite different from, I think it's quite different from France, or at least it's starting in France, for example, but it's not, France is still very documentary, and Britain is very conceptual, and I really enjoy that. I really enjoy the approach of Britain, also the approach in terms of education. So I hadn't studied art in France, so I can't compare really. But now I'm teaching in France in art schools, so that's the funny thing. But I am guessing that the system in Britain is quite different, and there was something very interesting about very horizontal in the way Britain teach art. Everything is about discussion and developing your criticality with the group, etc. And I really enjoy that. That's a method that I'm applying myself in teaching a lot. So I think photography came as it's always related. Your experiences are always related to chunk of life, I guess. And so I can't really disintricate those two things, but it has been 10 years, more than 10 years now that I work with photography. I went to London in 2011. Yeah, so a bit more than 10 years. And this part of my life is really, so it's connected to photography intensively, and it's also connected to a new criticality, I think, about the world that came partly from photography, partly from going to England, that also opened up a new way of looking at the world, I think, because when you change culture, and the Anglo-Saxon one is particular. I was used to a very Latin one, to the Mediterranean, to France, to Spain, and that was very different. So it opened up, a new world, I guess.
Well, and then you went and opened up Archipelago. Now, a couple questions about Archipelago. You call it a visual culture studio. So the first question is it a physical studio or sort of a conceptual studio?
It's a conceptual studio. There is no space.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just sort of want, when I read studio, I'm like, ooh, great, I can go visit. Just making sure.
Maybe one day.
Okay. The projects that you seem to do through Archipelago are very sort of disparate and random. And so, like, sometimes they're exhibitions, sometimes they're books, sometimes they're videos. Like, you do lots of different things. Is this by design or by sort of necessity? Like, are you intentionally choosing these kinds of randomly different sort of formats, or are those just the opportunities that come your way?
It's a bit of both, but I don't see them random.
Okay. Uh, maybe a bad choice of words on my part.
Archipelago was the choice of the name was actually related to what you may call randomness. I was interested in this notion of an archipelago, which means different islands that are connected by threads below the sea. So there is this sense of scattering of different projects, but they are connected by one thread. And the thread is photography. The thread is images, is analysis of the visual. And then I gathered in Archipelago my different interests. So one was when I started in 2015 in London, I started with artist books, which is one of my great interests. I've been working in bookshops for a long time and with booksellers, with companies, with Koenig Books in London especially. And I love books, and that's a medium that I really cherish. And so I started with this, and that has always been interesting to me, also in terms of creativity and how photographers work. I often bring it into my teaching because when you start imagining a project, if you bring it to the book format, you may do something completely different. So the book format, and you can enrich a lot your project by using the book format. Like not just putting photos like a portfolio in a book, but using the medium of the book to make a work of art. So that was one of my the first project that came very spontaneously because I was seeing a lot of artists creating books and not being able to show them because they were books that were a bit experimental, etc. So I created a space for that, and in that sense, not a space that was permanent, but I created exhibitions where there's books were available, and that's a project that is still in some ways going on. But I was doing a selection a year and creating exhibitions in different places. So I did it in London, I did it in Milan, in Barcelona too. That was traveling basically. So that was the first occurrence, the first events that were organized by Archipelago. But then there were more traditional type of exhibition, and I'm still doing them on photography. To go on answering your question, I think what can give a sense of randomness is that I'm very interested in. No, but that's interesting.
I'm so sorry
to
you're
see.
hung up on that
No,
word.
that's fine. I think that's interesting to me also to see how others perceive it. I'm not interested in traditional photography. That has never been an interest of mine, like black and white tradition and art, like history photography is not. I mean, I'm interested in history of photography, but I'm not interested in organizing exhibition on history of photography at all. I'm interested in what's happening now. I'm interested in how photography. I wasn't aware of that when in 2010 when I started studying photography, but how photography is connected to other medium, and more, like the connection between photography and contemporary art is a complicated issue.
Agreed.
Yeah. I'm interested in the way photography can get out of photography as well. So the connection with other medium as books, video, installation, sound sometimes. So one of the first exhibitions I organized in London was at Flowers Gallery, and it was connection between abstraction in photography with sound pieces. So there was a soundtrack in the exhibition, for example. So I think my interest is more in experimenting and experimental photography, experimental art than keeping with a very clear line of tradition.
Well, I'm totally on the same page with you. I mean, I've been a photographer for probably, including all the way back to like education, probably like 30 some odd years. And quite honestly, I got rid of my last camera about 4 or 5 years ago. Like, I'm just not interested in it anymore because it's so prevalent. Or I should say, like the traditional photographic qualities and imagery. I still work with photography, but I don't like post on Instagram every couple of days with new images and all this kind of stuff. Like, there is such a glut of imagery in the world. To a certain extent, it's kind of hard to say like, oh, you know what? I can do it better. I can do it, higher, whatever quality with more interesting content. So like, I also like have started working with multiple mediums and trying in different formats to express ideas, but still sort of working with photography. And I find that a lot of people who start off in photography evolve beyond the traditional stuff, which ends up the part I'm trying to get to here is like ends up sort of in the middle. Like, it's a lot of photographers are not photographers, so they're not sort of accepted in the photography world, but they're not painters or video artists or what, and they end up in this sort of like in between place that it becomes difficult to exhibit, difficult to put into a book, difficult to fund, difficult to get grants and residencies. And there's a lot of artists that I feel like these days that are falling in the middle, that are not getting the support that they needed through whatever, because they're sort of working interdisciplinary or almost too conceptually, or these kinds of different formats. And I find that very sad.
Yeah. I'm not completely aware of that. I think it's often very difficult for photographers to find the support they need. But this in between, I'm not sure
Agreed.
about it. Yeah.
There's not a lot of support for photography. Like, people think photography is easy and cheap and all this kind of stuff. And so like there's not a lot of both financial support and appreciation for good photography, which is totally subjective too, by the way.
Yes, well, that's one of the points. I think photography has been evolving very, very much since 20 years with the digital, but also with internet. And I think personally, I'm more and more interested in photography as a means to analyze the world of images we live in, not as a way of representing the world, but a sort of meta photography. So artists like Trevor Paglen or Hito Sterl that are analyzing the way the image is sociologically influencing our behaviors is something that interests me very much, and I think that's probably where photography is really useful and able to bring something to the subject today, more than for its indexicality. So I don't know where I wanted to bring you with this, but that's
It's okay. I never know where I'm going. It's fine.
No, but I was trying to answer something you said about the fact that there is little support. Yeah, I think you are right that we are in a time in which photography is not always identified, I think, by people correctly in some way. So there is this general assumption that still photography is indexical and has to create beautiful imagery. Then there are all those images that we see online that are modified, that are beautiful, very rich. And then there is this meta level in which photography can be a tool to analyze the stature of images today, the state of images today. That is maybe a more conceptual step, and that I think should be very interesting to photographers. And that's the part that is most interesting to me actually today.
Well, you brought up a word that has been sort of plaguing my career, that because I use it, and I'm not sure if I'm using it incorrectly or poorly, but the term beautiful, like beautiful images. That's a tough one because like if you make, as a photographer or as a creator, if you make beautiful work, oftentimes people think it's decorative or not very interesting, or that the concepts are not very strong because it's beautiful. And so like even just the nature of like doing that, because also I come from America, but I'm now in Europe. Now in America, I'm going to say they encourage quote unquote like beautiful work more than in Europe, which is very much stronger on the conceptual side. And so like once coming here, I'm suddenly like, I make beautiful work, and people are like, oh, you make beautiful work. And I'm like, thanks. But they meant it as an insult.
Yeah, it's a complicated thing. I guess often the beauty can be deserving to the concept, indeed. I agree on this. On the other side, you do need something visual to convey your idea. So beauty is often the way of doing it. I think there are a lot of different levels because on the other side, the art market needs beauty because otherwise they don't sell. The art market, it depends on the levels again, but a collector who wants to decorate his living room is not going to buy something about war. I don't know if anyone bought Guernica to decorate their living room. I don't think so.
Well, I think that's just because of scale.
Maybe too. That's true. Well, I'm sure there are rich people that have huge living rooms.
Oh yeah, I lived in the United Arab Emirates. There are plenty of very large living rooms.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
But I mean, but that sense of beauty, like I like, see, this is my position on it. Is like if any sort of creative person decides to create something that has an inherent sort of sense of beauty to it, what it does is it entices the viewer into the conversation that's being had. Like, so if you make imagery that doesn't have any sense of beauty, and when I say beauty, it could be beautiful design, beautiful colors, like there are elements of different beauty. It's not like a portrait of a beautiful person kind of thing. So like there could be just beautiful shapes, forms, color balances, all these kinds of things. But you need to have some sense of beauty in order to engage the viewer so that they then care about the concept behind it. And without that sort of ability to engage, that beautiful thing to attract the viewer, they're not going to care about the concept underneath it.
Yeah, I think probably you have a point, but at the same time, then I mean, what were those images? I can't remember, but there were images of a project I saw recently of war. It's always the same dilemma. I mean, when you represent something that is cruel or that is morally very controversial, and you make it beautiful, it's very ethically complicated.
Well, yeah, that's the Afghan girl from Stephen Curry. Like, I mean, he took what was a horrible situation and he made a beautiful photo of it. And so then the public perception is that that's a beautiful, horrible thing. And that's never helpful or useful.
No. Now there is this, and also you may take out a level of depth if the beauty is the conveyor. I'm not sure. There is something often a bit easy, but you're right. We are also communicator. I think it's a very thin line, a thin balance of finding the way of bringing the viewer in, but without taking out the depth of the topic and the concepts.
It is hard. I mean, and it's this thing that we struggle with all the time for sure. But also, you're a curator. I have lots of questions for curators because I love curators. Text. When it comes to artworks, whether it's applications or artist statements or things like this, how important are these texts that sort of accompany work, and even down to titles of individual pieces?
It's very important. It's very important because the title, for example, can suddenly change completely the work. Depending on the title you put underneath your images, the work can take a completely different meaning to the viewer. So there is this connection between text and the visual that is important. Then, in terms of artist statement, I think it's difficult to create a good artist statement.
Correct.
But it is an exercise that shows to the curator the depth and articulation of the thinking behind the projects. I mean, I see a lot of them. And for example, in the UK, our artist statements are very structured, and I like it. They are short, they are direct, they are good. In France, for example, people struggle more with this, and in Italy, I won't tell you, because it goes into like poetic.
Oh, I hate poetic artist statements like so much. Well, see, okay, I have this because I do portfolio reviews also. So, like, one of the things that I have is like, I feel like there should be a balance. So, the more abstract or conceptual the series of work is, sort of visually as an art piece, I feel like the more concrete and sort of cohesive and coherent the statement should be in order to balance it out. So, like, the one thing I really, really hate is when people do abstract work and an abstract sort of poetic statement. It's just like, I have no fucking idea what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and often this kind of very abstract and poetic statement are just hiding that there is not much there.
Agreed.
So, yeah. I tend to like short statements that are very clear to the point, to the topics that are treated, and what the photographer has intended to do.
Well, it's interesting because I've also noticed over the years, like, so in the United States, when I was coming out of school, we were told that basically an artist statement was the one and only chance we as the creators had to sort of like, and my teachers even used this term, like, to be a cheerleader for our art. So, like, we're trying to sell our art. We're trying to, like, encourage people to see, like, how this fits into the lexicon and the entire canon of art history. Like, here, this is how connects to this and this, and it's so great because of blah blah blah. And then I come to Europe, and like, the artist statements here, everybody's like, I'm making this thing. It's very humble. It's very clean, to the point, and it no frivolous words, no additional, cheering on kind of thing. I love the European way of doing it so much more because I'm fucking tired of being my own show pony and sort of having to, like, cheer myself on. I find it so, yeah, I like the European way.
Yeah, I guess there is a sense of marketing in what you're describing, the American way. I mean, when I see something marketing in photography or something else, I'm dubious of the quality that is behind. So,
yeah, it's always like, like they always sell themselves so much that you're like, is it really that great? Like, really?
yeah.
I think you're
Mm-hmm.
overdoing it. But going back to the text thing, because this is one of my sort of misunderstandings, I think, over the course of my career. I always believed that an artist should be the one who writes their artist statements. Now, in my old age, which I'm not that old, but like in my older age, I have come to sort of embrace and enjoy the idea of almost working collaboratively with a curator to create that text, because I feel like they offer greater insight and perspective on the work than just the single perspective and subjective perspective that I would have on my own work. So I love that. But is that acceptable in the industry to have statements or artist bios or anything like this sort of written by or written collaboratively with a curator?
I mean, nobody has to know it. I don't know. I personally think, because in my teaching jobs, I work a lot with students, bringing them to write about their work. And I personally think that writing about your work is a way of going deeper into your work and being able to articulate better the concept, because often, indeed, artists have an intuition that stays there. But to be able to really develop your ideas and to develop your practice, you need to be able to analyze this intuition. At least it's my view of it. And writing is a great way of doing it. So I would personally expect from an artist to be able to write him or herself his statement, because it shows his ability to understand what he is doing and where he wants to go and what he wants to convey. But I do understand, and I do see it, that a lot of artists have benefit from collaboration with a curator that is able to see the work from outside. Very often there are topics that I see in a work that the artists haven't seen. But it also comes down to each one's perspective. I mean, I see a lot of work, so probably it comes down to that. But I often say that I don't think the work of an artist and the curator are so different. I think there is, in both parts, I teach critical research, so that's very much my thing. But I do think that both jobs are about researching a lot and being able to condense this research and to create a discourse about a topic through this research, or for an artist through his art, and for a curator through a set of artworks that are creating a discourse. So I don't see maybe it's a weird take on it, but I do think that the work is quite similar in some ways. And so research is really important, and an artist should be able to see where he stands in the topic he has chosen to investigate.
It's hard because, like, I've often wondered how to structure an artist statement, because like some artworks or some art series are very personal, and it's like, how personal should I share? And like, what's necessary to be put into an artist statement and what's not necessary? Because, like, again, I still feel like, as the creator of the work, I probably have a dozen different ideas running through my head about what the work's all about, but the ability to try and refine it down to like the single thread, the one topic that it truly is talking about, even though it is still talking about all those other things, that's the really hard part, to try and make it so that it has a very precise purpose in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very complicated, but I think it's the challenge of being an artist. Going back to what we were saying at the beginning, I don't think being an artist is just going through the world and taking pictures of beautiful flowers. There is a sense, maybe there is a responsibility of the artist of really wondering what he wants to say and being sharp about it. And so, but that's a difficult thing, and I see it a lot with students that are packing their projects with thousands of ideas that are really interesting, but you can't put everything in one project, and you do need to choose one and to go seriously about it, and not just bring all this quote of famous people and try to make something. No, I just think it's it's a question of focusing and concentrating, being able to analyze what you're doing. I agree, it's very difficult because you are into the work.
Well, not only that, but like, okay, like, so going back to like the idea of like how it used to be versus how it is now, kind of thing. Like, in the old days, I say the old days, when I was a kid, the schools were often like telling you, like, find a style. Like, it was all about finding a style, a visual style that you're talking about. And I find that oftentimes some of the artists that I appreciate more now are people who find an idea and they may express it or show it or investigate it in different ways and in different styles, but they have a beautiful common thread of what they're talking about throughout their career. So like I find this sort of vernacular of like the idea of a style sort of has changed and grown over the years from a visual style, like, you know, like your Andy Warhol, like they all look like Andy Warhols kind of thing, but to more of like you come up with a thing you want to investigate, and you find various different methodology to investigate it. You know, you could do videos, you could do prints, you could do books, you could do whatever kind of thing. And I personally enjoy that opportunity. I feel like it sort of has opened up a lot of opportunities to sort of do a lot more in your career than it used to do.
Yeah, I guess that comes down to two things. One of the things is that photography was born as an indexical medium, an indexical tool that was just creating a representation of the real, and then the visual was very important. Like the style was very important to differentiate you from another. But that was that's where photography was not considered really like an art, because there was less of a position of an artist in it. It was only on the surface, I guess. Well, that's what I find. And probably what you are talking about the concept and the exploration of a topic and the investigation comes down to to photography evolving more towards art and contemporary art. When Duchamp does the Robert Mutt toilet appropriation in the 20s, he is not looking at the beauty, or he's looking at contemporary society of his time, and new ways of what do I want to say there is that probably art in the 20th century has evolved very much towards concepts, and photography is taking the same route, which I think is very very interesting and right.
Agreed. I mean, you know, as I always sort of bucked the whole system of it. Like I've been more like Gerhard Richter, kind of like an artist. Like you just do whatever medium is necessary to express your idea versus just, you know, finding a style. Because even especially in photography, like, and like I don't want to even get into all like photographers are some of the most competitive and backstabbing artists like among them all, because they feel like they have like special things and all this kind of stuff. But anyways, but they the a style a tech, oftentimes in photography especially, is a technique which could easily be copied, and that's a hindrance, I believe, that's always been. I mean, I guess technically painting could have been the same. You know, you could have said, oh well, the brush strokes can all be the same brush strokes kind of thing. But the idea that of finding a style, I always found really limiting. Like I really loved the idea of like working off of an idea or some sort of internal issue or idea or motivation versus of tangible process or technique.
But I think the style comes from the exploration, basically. What Richter does is I mean, he has a very clear style, Richter. You can recognize his paintings everywhere. I mean, you see, and now he's selling his painting to Vuitton for his advertisement, for the advertisement campaigns. And you see, I mean, I saw it not that long ago, and I saw the Richter painting behind the bag of Vuitton. His name was nowhere, and I recognized it, obviously. So there is a style anyway, but the style, I think, it's like an evolution, and it comes from the exploration you make. Obviously, Richter went into this representation of photographs during years, and he developed a style for it, and then he erased his pictures through this paintbrush. And all these make a style, but the style comes down from the concepts he developed, I think.
Well, see, like one of my early like people that I found that I was just like, holy shit, was like Sigmar Polke. Like he just like he took everything and turned it on his head. He like took all the traditional ideas and just said, you know, fuck all of you all. I'm just going to do whatever the hell I want. And I loved that about him. He's so amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But that's very hard to do. Like the problem is like the people who do these amazing things often end up being outliers, and unfortunately they're not like the center of the industry.
Well, but Paul, I don't know what was his situation when he was alive. Was he not recognized? Yes, I think he was.
Near the end, I think he probably was more. But
and
yeah, he was reasonable.
Richter is one of the most expensive artists at this time. I mean, didn't wait his stuff.
Well, but again, I call them outliers because like they're the one, because like there's no like whole train of like style of polka. There's no whole like entire, you know, movement around Richter kind of thing. Like so they're outliers because they're just these individuals who have success, but yet there's not a lot of like sort of surrounding it, which is very unfortunate. I would love to be associated with like the school of Sigmar Polke.
Yeah, it's good school.
Even though I never met him, but you know. Anyways, all right. I know you're limited on time, so let's finish this up with any sort of advice that you have for like the next generation, because you're also a teacher, you do portfolio reviews, so you often are giving advice out to people. So like, I guess the thing I'm most interested in is like, what are some of the mistakes that people are often making that you often have to give feedback towards?
Lack of research. So not being able to know where you stand as a photographer. I mean, you arrived after 2,000 years, or I don't know how many years of art history. You need to know a bit about that, I think, in order not to repeat and to do obvious things. That's one thing.
Agreed.
And the second one is don't try to get inspired by others, but don't copy. That's very boring and you won't bring anything. You won't go anywhere with that. Try to be connected to oneself and to do something that is personal, but thinking of the viewer. I mean, being personal and universal is probably the most difficult thing in art, but that's the only thing that works.
And I love that statement. So we'll just wrap it up there. It's beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to the complete conversation. We would appreciate it if you would share the podcast with your friends, family, coworkers, studio mates, anyone with an interest in the arts and creative endeavors. The building and strengthening of the arts and creative community is at the core of our mission for this podcast. They can listen and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. We are produced by 5014. The audio was edited by CushAudio Services, and the music was created by Pete Bybee. The Wise Fool Art Podcast is supported in part by an EEA grant from Iceland, Liechtenstein, and Norway in an effort to work together for a green, competitive, and inclusive Europe. We would also like to thank our partners Hunt Kastner in Prague, Czech Republic, and Kunstsentrene i Norge in Norway. Links to EEA grants and our partner organizations are available in the show notes or on our website, wisefoolpod.com.